everybody. Welcome to another edition of The Drop. Greg Wyshynski, Arda, Öcal here with you after every Stanley Cup final game. For the final time, La Bamba was played in Edmonton, and that means we have a Game 7 in Sunrise. My goodness, Wish, if you had said that at the beginning of the series, maybe a lot of people wouldn't be surprised. But they certainly are now the way that this series has transpired. Why don't we start with a 20,000-foot view as the Edmonton Oilers win the game 5-1, 2 empty net goals, they force a Game 7. But just overall, this series has been surreal, spectacular. Like, it's been a pretty crazy ride, hasn't it?
You're surprised, and I'm surprised because neither one of us are the Edmonton Oilers who always believed this was going to happen. Remember what Stuart Skinner said? If anyone can do it, it's the Oil. Remember when Chris Knobloch, their coach, talked about the next 10 days of the series, and we were all like, you're dumb. How is it possible you're looking 10 days ahead when your team is on the precipice of being swept? They knew it all along, that obviously that they were going to come back in the series and force a Game 7. It's just that we are the dumb ones and the ones who are short-sighted. But as you mentioned, the Edmonton Oilers now become the third team in NHL history to start the Stanley Cup Final down 3-0 and rally to force a Game 7. The 1945 Detroit Red Wings didn't work out for them. They lost in Game 7. The 1942 Toronto Maple Leafs, the only team in NHL history to do what the Florida Panthers hope the Edmonton Oilers cannot do on Monday, which is win the Stanley Cup after trailing 3-0.
So the first place people will look, obviously, is goaltending. It's a tale of two Bobs. It's a tale of two Stewarts, right? What is it exactly that has caused these two goaltenders to essentially switch roles in the last three games?
So I'll give you Skinner. And in Skinner's case, he's done what the Oilers have done all playoff, which is become a different goalie after Game 3 of each series. I think he's now only has one loss next to maybe like 9 or 10 wins after Game 3 of each round of the playoffs. Famously benched in the Vancouver series in the semifinals. It gave him a chance to reset, clear his head. He comes back and is the goalie that the Oilers always told us he could be in the postseason. The thing that I love most about Skinner is that while he's obviously making the saves he needs to make, and he's getting a ton of help by the Edmonton defense, which we'll get to in a second, the two things that are most impressive are, one, his role in the penalty kill. He's the backbone of their penalty kill, and their penalty kill is unstoppable right now. It's the biggest disparity maybe in the series besides who has Connor McDavid and who doesn't. And the other thing that I think he's doing extraordinarily well is he's making the key saves at key times to not have the momentum pivot in these games. You think about the beginning of game 5 where he made a key save. Here tonight, he was good in certain spots. I mean, that's what you need in the playoffs. But I'll push back on Bobrovsky. Like, look, he's not the shutout guy anymore. I think he's exhausted. They were worried about fatigue last year. Now I think they're probably even more worried about fatigue as a year older, and this series has gone on. And frankly, he's not the same goalie that he was in Game 1. But I don't know if I think the framing of your question was that he's a liability and the reason they're in the pickle they're in. And I know that the goals over the 3 wins for the Oilers would tell you that's probably the case. I mean, it's 18-5, I think it is. But I think he wasn't great in Game 5. I think in Game 6, it's a breakaway. It's an odd man rush. It's Ekblad falling down and Fogle getting a wide open chance. And those are your 3 goals, and that's your game. And I know that we expect Bob to be heroic and do the bobbery and save the day, but I don't think at this point in the postseason you can expect that anymore. And I think he needed more help in front of him, and he didn't get it tonight.
Okay, Stuart Skinner getting a lot of help in front of him. What has made the Oilers this defensive juggernaut lately?
Well, here's the thing. Again, like much like Skinner, they seem to get better defensively as the series goes on, and maybe that's a feeling out process. Maybe they have to feel their backs against the wall a little bit to get that commitment. But every time the Panthers have a chance or something brewing, it seems like they just shoot the puck into an Oiler. Like the shot disparity in the first period, yeah, there was a lot of puck possession, but it also just seemed like when they would have an opportunity, they weren't really getting anything through to Skinner to really be all that dangerous. The story of the defense of this team is really interesting, Arda, because when Jay Woodcroft was the coach early in the season, he prefers a 1-1-3 defensive system. Okay. That's kind of the system he likes to play. And the Oilers kind of wanted there to be a shift into another, maybe like a 2-1-2 or something like that. And Woodcroft can't really coach that. And so when they fire him and bring in Knobloch, they bring in a guy who is better at coaching the defensive system that the management, and in particular Jeff Jackson, the president of this team, wanted this team to play. And so he really unlocked something defensively with this group. And we've seen it throughout the regular season when they turn their season around. And I think we've seen it a lot in these playoffs, whereas the series goes on, they really clamp down and they play really well in front of Skinner. And you know, it's hard to really think about the Edmonton Oilers as a defensive juggernaut. But at this point, they're winning this series on defense as much as they're winning it on Connor McDavid's stick before game 6, at least.
22 block shots and 18 takeaways tonight for the Oilers. There was also a goal called back on an offside review. This one is going to be talked about for a while. This was millimeters, if that. And you saw Paul Maurice. He talked about it after the game. He said, you know, I didn't have the angle. That was the conclusive angle, apparently, that the league had or that the officials had. And Paul Maurice was quite visibly upset, as was Bill Zito up in the stands. Now, what did you make of the call itself and the fallout?
First of all, I hate it. I mean, it's another one of these couple of pixels type of calls that takes a good goal off the board. It's the danger of having offside reviews. We know why we have it. We have it because Matt Duchene was a country mile offside for one game, and they all decided it was something we needed to fix. To me, it's much more like balls and strikes. Occasionally you get it wrong. Occasionally you get it right. It leads to goals. I think we are very myopic about it. I'd change the rule. But that being said, the angle that they apparently had that Maurice didn't see was a bit more definitive than the angles that he saw. He said tonight he wouldn't have challenged it based on the available evidence, but then he had a linesman come over and say, well, we had this angle come in late in the review and it became kind of obvious. It cannot be stressed enough how much of a pivot point in this game this was. And both teams talked about it. This was a moment in which the Panthers responded 10 seconds after Adam Henrique's goal to cut the lead to 2-1. That is Maurice said that's the spark we needed, and they didn't get it. And they got it taken off the board. It's a 2-0 game again. Hyman scores late in the period, 3-0, and we're going back to sunrise at that point. So, you know, whether you agree with the call or disagree with the call, whether they had the angle, they don't have the angle, it doesn't matter. It truly was the pivot point for the game, in my opinion, because you could feel the Panthers could have pushed after that and found their game, and it sapped their energy, I think, after getting that goal taken off the board.
Real quick, I want to know if the Oilers had that angle before they made the challenge. And if they didn't, that is a gutsy challenge.
So I don't know if their video guys had it. So the way it works, they have two video coaches. They radio it down to Mark Stewart, assistant coach. They discuss it on the bench, and then they decide whether or not to challenge. I don't know if they had that angle. According to the linesman, from what he said to Maurice, that angle came in late. That being said, Chris Knobloch was convinced it was offside. Like, not even a question in his mind when he saw that play that it was offside. Now maybe he's trusting his gut. Maybe he's got an intuition on this thing. I don't know what. But while Maurice is like, you know, I wouldn't challenge it based on the available evidence, Knobloch saw that play and he's like, offside. So I don't think they needed the angle. I think that they were convinced right off the hop that it was offside. And in fact, Knobloch said tonight, his only hesitation was a concern that they did not have a definitive angle that would prove what he believed to be true.
A couple of other things about this game. Man, there's so many storylines in this series. Like, this is such a surreal cup final. It really is. Zach Hyman. So let's just give him some flowers here, because we did spend some time on a previous episode talking about all the top 5 goal scorers for Edmonton have been silent in this series, and now they've come to life. Zach Hyman scores on the breakaway. He now ties Austin Matthews for most goals this year, regular season and playoffs, which in itself is an incredible accomplishment, especially for everything that Zach Hyman has been through this season. It's awesome to see from a human standpoint, but just the fact that he's reached that and is approaching Herculean levels of goals in the postseason is something else.
I love the guy, but what a goofy stat. All that means is that your team was good in the postseason. Like you had a real good regular season, and then you weren't the Leafs. Is basically the accomplishment of that stat. But look, man, you're right. I mean, there's no getting around the goal total in the playoffs. The other part of it too, when we talk about guys that weren't scoring, Draisaitl has the primary assist on Fogel's goal to open up the scoring. After we all wrote about Draisaitl before Game 6, talking about how much he hates his game and he's not happy with the way he's playing. Still wasn't all that dominant in Game 6, but made the play that they needed. Again, they get a break because Ekblad falls down on the play, but the pass was great and the finish was good from Fogel. But the thing we haven't talked about is that for all of the discussion we've had about McDavid, going to win the Conn Smythe, win or lose, he's definitely going to win the Conn Smythe now. He didn't have an impact on this game. Like, this wasn't a McDavid game. This was if it's McDavid and friends, this was the friends who won Game 6.
Yes,
for the Edmonton Oilers. That's a real scary thought if you're Florida, is that they just sent this game to Game 7, sent the series to Game 7, and they didn't need McDavid to do it. Like, if they're at this point, like, I don't even know how you come back. And I guess that's what we should talk about now, Arda. Is this going to be the biggest
friends
choke?
Part?
Is this going to be the biggest choke in the history of hockey? Maybe in the history of sports, where they have a 3-0 lead in the Stanley Cup Final. They have them dead to rights. They're controlling McDavid. Nobody else is scoring, and they fumble the bag. They squander the series.
I mean, it feels inevitable, but maybe a part of that is hockey fans are buying into the narrative. And if you don't have a rooting interest in this series, I would assume that the majority of neutral hockey fans would want the Oilers to win just based on the story alone. Like, just to be able to witness this kind of history that we may never see again in our lifetime. That has only ever happened once, and that was in 1942. Like, it's unbelievable. But here's the thing. You mentioned it in the last podcast. The Panthers play their best hockey when their backs are against the wall. Well, guess what? Now their backs are actually against the wall. Now they could actually be eliminated. Now this is the most pressure they will ever feel in this series.
But what we're looking at right now is a situation where the Florida Panthers were 1 win away from a franchise-defining moment. They've never won a cup before. They've been to the final 3 times. They are thought of by a lot of hockey fans up until the last couple of seasons as a joke franchise. Probably better known for throwing rats on the ice, relocation rumors, and the team that used to give anyone with a valid Florida driver's license a free ticket to the game. And they had a chance to erase all that history and redefine it. And now they're going to fumble the bag. Now they're going to be redefining themselves as the team that blew the 3-0 lead in the Stanley Cup Final, and a team that enters the pantheon of the biggest choke jobs in the history of professional sports. That's what they're faced with now. It's not simply losing the cup, Arda. It's being a laughing stock. They were 1 win away from not being a laughing stock, and now they are 1 loss away from being the laughing stock of the National Hockey League.
Yeah, this is definitely in that. You're absolutely right in everything you said there. I will also add can I just say one thing
Please.
real quick? The funniest heel move that could possibly happen is the Panthers winning Game 7 5-0.
Yeah. But and listen, I came into Game 6 saying that they were going to close out the series because of what we just talked about. Backs against the wall, they feel like the underdog, they feel like the aggrieved party. That's when they're at their best. They were a non-factor. They were an NPC in Game 6. Like, I cannot believe how little impact the Panthers had on this game. Like, this is a chance to win the cup. It's their 3rd crack at it. If they squander it, their margin of error is poof, gone. And they didn't even compete. Like, what is happening? They weren't dangerous. They weren't anything. They were a little bit physical on the forecheck, and there were some moments when they had a heartbeat. But after the first period, the Tkachuk line got rolled to the tune of 6-0 on shot attempts. Like they were we were all praising Kachuk for being relevant again in game 5 and looking like himself again. Where the hell was he in game 6? Where the hell were any of these guys in game 6? It's stunning to me what has happened to this team. And I know it's a tough place to play, and I know we have to give the Oilers their flowers for rallying in this series, but by God, what the hell happened to the Florida Panthers, Arda?
You mentioned Connor McDavid and friends. Sasha Barkov had no friends.
Yeah.
Like the end friends part was completely out of the equation. Sasha Barkov, as Ray Ferraro said on the broadcast, a man on an island by himself in this game. And by the way, he scored a fantastic, well, he scored 2 goals, 1 called back, but he scored a fantastic goal. Like that was really a great goal. And that was like, that's when I was like, wait a minute, this kind of happened last game where they brought it to within 1 and then let in an empty net goal, but then nothing happened.
No lift, no punch, no pushback, no nothing. So I was waiting to talk to the Panthers after the game, and they went back to their locker room after the final buzzer. I heard 2 things. I heard a stick get absolutely slammed against something, a wall, the floor, something, and then a very familiar expletive to anyone who has seen Eddie Murphy's Raw that we cannot mention here on the drop for family reasons, exclaimed rather loudly by somebody who then probably had thrown that stick. They stayed in that locker room for a long time. Management was in there. Coaches were in there. They had a long talk. They're going to have a lot of long talks. I don't know how you flip the script. I don't know how you reverse course. Maybe if you get the first goal in game 7, you're feeling a little bit better about life. You can figure out your game after that. But I don't know who this Panthers team is anymore. Like, they don't look like themselves. Their power play sucks beyond belief. I can't watch it anymore. It's painful. Even with Ekman Larson being a little bit better on the point, it was just painful to watch tonight. I don't know how you reverse this. I don't know what you do. What do you do if you're the Panthers right now?
Oilers' historical penalty kill in this postseason. They're like just riding an incredible wave. You score first, and you have a great game from Sergei Bobrovsky, and you have your depth. Like, here's the thing. Going into this series, we were talking about the Panthers. If they can have their offense clicking and Stuart Skinner is average, they will have the depth to find the back of the net. That was one of the big narratives. Well, they need that in game 7. That's what they need. They need to act like they need to find that gear. They need to activate. They need to have, like you said, Kachuk needs to wake up in game 7 like he did the previous game. Sasha Barkov needs to continue. They need Verhaeghe and Reinhart and the others to wake up. They need those contributions like an Evan Rodriguez game that happened a couple games ago. That's what they need.
The most painful thing tonight, dude, was being in that Panthers locker room and hearing these guys try to convince themselves that this is a good thing. Like, you had Verhaeghe talking about how it's every kid's dream to play in a game 7. I'm sorry, but when you're a boy on the pond growing up, flicking around the old puck with your friends, I doubt you're saying, oh, let's play. We blew a 3-0 lead in the Stanley Cup final, and now we have to play a game 7. And oh my God, everything's falling apart and our goalie stinks. No, you were not doing that. This is a disaster. Feel the panic. Feel the frustration. Feel the fact that you're about to be embarrassed on home ice and have the Oilers, who had dead to rights in the series, skate the cup over the logo at center ice. Feel all that, because it's real now. The margin for error is gone. The platitudes are done. You guys are choking away the Stanley Cup in front of our eyes. Do something about it.
Unbelievable. So game 7 is Monday. Of course, we will have a show right afterwards. That will be the last show because it's the last game. And I believe, Wish, by the way, total side note, as far as normal, regular, non-interrupted regular seasons in the NHL go, this will be the latest the cup will have been awarded in a normal season. You feel it. You know it.
I'm fully aware of the length of this series. Trust me. A couple things before we move on real quick to other business. Fans riding a Zamboni down the street in Edmonton. Elon, if you're watching, forget the Cybertruck, the Cyber Zamboni, get on it. It was quite a sight to see.
What else? There were Oilers fans singing Sergei through the American national anthem.
Yeah, towards the beginning of it. I think they didn't realize what was happening. It was kind of beat that they were doing that as the anthem started, but then they stopped and started singing it, but it was a little bit embarrassing. Oh, Canada was awesome again. The fans were awesome. The one thing, so the rat exterminators were back. The woman dressed as the Stanley Cup, the people who wear overalls, the orange people, they were all here. We had a new addition to the pantheon of San Diego Comic-Con cosplayers that come to Edmonton games. There were two guys dressed as Dasani water bottles in honor of Bill Cito throwing a water bottle in disgust at the end of Game 5. I love it here, man. These fans are out of control with all of it, whether they all wear a jersey or they dress up in costume. And I wish every fan base could take a hint from Edmonton.
A+ cosplay. You love to see it. Okay, let's do a quick news item. There was a lot of news in the NHL. I want to focus on one news item because it definitely hits close to home for one Greg Wyshynski. Jacob Markstrom finally joining the New Jersey Devils. Remember, Wish, earlier this season when we were joking about how we were surprised that Jacob Markstrom was allowed to leave Prudential Center? What was this, in February?
Yeah.
Well, he made his way back there.
Hey, look, the two Jakes is a real solid goalie tandem. I think Markstrom, Markstrom's going to be really good for them. And if he's not, he only has 2 years left on his contract. Kevin Ball's going to be a good defenseman for the Flames. He'll be a really good defenseman if he can find his physical game. I think that's a good guy they got, and they get a first-round pick out of it too, lottery protected. Look, he had full no movement protection. He could pick where he wanted to go. It was limited options for Craig Conroy, the GM of the Flames. I think he made an okay trade. And for the Devils, I mean, you're going to be able to go out into unrestricted free agency and find a replacement for Ball. Maybe Zadorov, maybe someone like that. I think this is a great deal for them, obviously. And then we should just touch on real quick the Dubois trade, where the Capitals sent Kemper to the Kings for Pierre-Luc Dubois. Look, Rob Blake made a mess. He cleaned it up as best he could. I think it's a better option than putting a buyout on your cap for a gigantic mistake you made. I don't know if Washington can fix Dubois. I do know that they needed a center pretty badly, given the health of Nick Backstrom and the trade of Evgeny Kuznetsov. We'll see what comes of it for them. But they had a goalie in Darcy Kemper. They didn't need any more. They had a position they needed to fill with Dubois. Kudos to both teams for trying to solve some problems. But man, that Dubois trade is still going to sting Rob Blake, even though he got him off the cap.
We will see if the Panthers can fix this series for themselves. Game 7 in Sunrise Monday. We will see you on the drop. After that, our final episode of the season, and you get to fly to Florida again.
I'm ready, baby. This is how it all needs to end. Connor, the Panthers, the Cup. It's great. I go into the game with no expectation other than the fact that it will be the last game of the season.